Knowing what you know now, would you have jumped different, wrestled different, if you had kind of thought it from a yogic perspective, you know?
Everything I would have done in my life before now would have been better. And not only that would I have been better at it, but how I would handle every situation would be better.
What do you mean by that? This taking versus giving?
It's when we project ourselves into a false reality, which means into who we were or who we want to be. It takes us away from the truth. The more that we place ourselves in the middle as we are, because everything that we know happens through our experience, so it's really hard to remove yourself as the experiencer. Everything is subjective, but subjectivity can never be truth. It can never be objectively true. Mm-hmm. And so how can you experience something that's true and real and make choices that are real if you yourself aren't seeing them as how they actually are? In yoga, it's called vasana. And vasana literally means smear. Like if you were to smear paint on something, or if you were to put on a pair of red glasses. Everything that you see is red. So if you go to paint a picture and you pull out your paints and you start painting it, or I don't know if you've ever worked on your computer with the flux thing, so it turns the screen orange, yeah. And then you try to edit. I edit photos because I'm a photographer, and then try to edit photos and not realize that your screen's orange, and then you look at it and you're like, why are my colors so messed up? Right. You know, this is how we treat life. We treat life as how we see them, not how they are. And so when you are mindful and aware and you remove yourself from that, you start seeing things as they are rather than how you are. And if you make decisions on how things are, then the results of those decisions, that happens, the choices that you make, you'll actually get what you are set out for, the intention that you put into it. But if you start, you know, it happens all the time with relationships that we have. If we get in a fight with someone that we love, or an interaction with a stranger or something, you only see things how you're seeing them. And a lot of times it's from the emotions. Emotions are one of the worst vasanas that we have because it alters our mind so much. This modification, or in yoga it's vritti, it changes you so much. So once you learn to remove those emotions, or even understand that you have them and stop looking through them, and you see things as they are, the choices that you make it changes everything. So
you wish you had made different choices?
I wish I would have made so many different choices.
Like what?
A lot of the choices that I wish I would have made different. It's hard to look back and say I wish I would have changed things, because I am finally at a place where I'm happy with who I am. And so if I change those things, would I be who I am now? But also looking back from that, if the things I think that I would have changed the most are how I've treated a lot of people in my life, because I've thought I was a victim. You know, when you're in a conflict and you think that you're a victim, you're seeing things as you are. So when I was, I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but it's good to get in these kind of things. So when I was growing up as a young kid, I had a stepmother who was very cruel to me. She was a little bit physically abusive to me and mentally abused me a lot. She had alcohol problems and everything else. And I spent my whole life until a few years ago feeling like I was abused and a victim from this, because I only saw things, first of all, as not who I am, but a 5, 10 to 13-year-old boy. So that's not me. That was somebody else. My memories that I have from there might not even be real. Right. Because we create so much. If we go back to our past and we think of how things happened, that's not how they happened. We have so many layers of glasses on top of that we see situations distorted, and then we remember things through emotions, and if the emotions were heightened and the scars are there, nothing is true that you think happened.
Right, but something also did happen.
But something also did happen. Right. But what affects you now is if you get in a fight when you're a kid, you don't feel the pain from the fight later on. You feel the emotional response from the fight later on. But if I think back to when I was a kid and my stepmother, who was early 20s, not ready to be a mom. My mom had me when she was 19. My stepmom was younger than my mom. And so back like that, and I actually see things as how she saw them, and I remove myself as somebody that has to deal with this kid that she probably didn't want to be a mom of, her problems, everything, and it wasn't about me. And as soon as you realize that it's not about you, then you no longer have to carry that role of being a victim. You no longer have to carry that this is something that I did. It's just something that happened. There was a physical thing, but why am I carrying that emotional baggage with me? It's like, you ever seen that show Hoarders?
Yeah.
So I actually have a friend who works on that show. As a camera guy.
Okay.
And I worked as a paramedic and a firefighter for 8 years, so going into these houses of hoarders, it's the craziest thing. It's an absolute sickness. And it destroys people. It destroys who they are, it destroys their families, anybody that they come in contact with. And how you cure a hoarder is you throw away their shit. That's what they do. They go in there and they go, do you need this? And yeah, I need that. You need this VCR box from 1980. You don't even have the VCR anymore, but you need this. And so systematically teaching them to get rid of the things that they don't need, they create space. What we don't realize is that we're all hoarders. We're carrying around our past. We're carrying around all the garbage from when you're a little kid. I carry around the garbage from, I'm going to call it, it'd be amazing if this guy's watching it, but I remember in the 3rd grade, Trevor Jenkins called me Lord Wiener. And that like hurt me.
Because your last name, Werner Wiener.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then it was Dildo Wiener. And it's like names hurt when you're a little kid, when you're fragile and you don't have an identity. Right. Now it's like, someone called you a name, you don't care because you don't have any identity to that. But when you're a little kid and you're trying to form that, that stuff sticks with you. Now it doesn't stick with me. It doesn't bother me if someone calls me Dildo Wiener or any other name.
But you remember Trevor Jenkins.
I remember it.
It's a great bully name too, Trevor Jenkins.
Oh, it's such a great bully name. And I think he moved to San Diego also
there
afterwards.
You go.
But anyways.
So that's some of the things you were hoarding.
No, I wasn't really hoarding that, but I was hoarding a lot of stuff from my childhood for sure.
And you were able to see this through yoga?
Through yoga, yeah. Well, I mean, yoga is just a word to define understanding how things are. And it was when I understood how things are. You don't have to be a yogi to do this. Anybody could do this.
But without the yoga practice, you probably wouldn't have had this realization.
Yoga was the route that I took.
Okay. But it wouldn't have necessarily happened through skydiving or mountain rock climbing.
It didn't for me.
Right. Okay.
So.
Yeah.
And I think that's, yoga is, some people like to define themselves as yogis because they like warrior too. If you went 150 years ago, people weren't doing warrior two, they weren't doing any asanas, and there's a lot of yogis. You go to India, everyone's a yogi. No one does yoga. It's like, so what we think.
Explain that.
I mean, we think yoga is stretching and poses and whatever, but those are only just tools to this. And so if you understand that where you're going is here, and you understand that you want to see the truth, it doesn't matter what those tools are. I think meditation is one of the greatest tools that we could use. Yoga, the physical part, is just a moving meditation. Right. It's through the body to understand the mind, to understand presence. Nature is an even stronger one when you sit in nature. Because you look at nature, nature is in itself in perfect harmony and balance in its natural state. And we are nature. Alan Watts said, we think that we came into this world like we're an alien or something separate, something different from this planet, but we came out of this world like leaves from a tree, and we really are that. And the leaves are the same as the tree is the same as the leaves. It's saying that the drop of water is the ocean or whatever that.
Yeah.
When we are able to see this connection and start to see ourselves as one, then It's all this pathway to truth.
And yet we're the species that kind of engineers ourselves away from nature in so many ways. It kind of cleverly pushes us to these other places.
Yeah, it's when you have to be confronted with yourself, and that's what the present moment does, is it confronts you with who you are. And there's nothing to hide behind. There's nothing to see things different. And so you have to face all those things. I remember you talking about fears. Fears is you have a fear, and that's a calling card for you to walk into that. Well, most people are afraid to look at themselves in the mirror. Most people are afraid to see who they really are, to see inside their soul, to be honest with themselves. But that's what we need to do. And that's when you see that VCR box is useless and you're able to throw that away. That all this stuff, this past that you've been hoarding, that you've been holding on to, is just garbage. Yet you've occupied your life with it so much that you have no space for anything real to take place. In Buddhism, they're always talking about emptying. It's about becoming empty. Well, empty is a process. You know, when you think like this glass here, as I drink it, I'm making it empty. Right now it's full. It's delicious, and as I drink more of it, it'll eventually become empty. But once it's empty, it's spacious. That means that there's room to fill it with something. Well, if that was filled with urine, you know, I'm not going to drink it. It's full. It's just garbage. I don't want what's in there. For me to put something, to make that vessel, we're vessels, we're containers, that whole nature. To make that useful, I have to empty out what's in there to fill it with what I want. But we can't do that because we don't want to confront what that is, because there's honesty there.